Hello everyone, my name is Divya Sharma and today I shall be teaching you students about the very basic concept of biology and the first chapter of 11th class, that is living world. So when we see our surrounding, we see many living things and non-living things. So how can we say that this is living or this is non-living? So in today's chapter we will be discussing the defining features of a living or a non-living and the reasons behind them. Okay, so when we discuss what is living thing, okay, all living things, when we define living things, what we often think that living things are the those things which can reproduce, right, which can reproduce, which have metabolic activities, metabolism and consciousness and many more. We will be discussing all these properties one by one. So when we talk about growth, right, we often talk about growth, that is if a organism is growing, then it is called as uh, a defining property of living organism, but it is not. Why? If we take about the growth, you know, all living organisms can grow, and we know that all living organisms can grow, and there are two growth has twin characters. The one is, that is, growth has twin characters. Growth has twin characters, that is, increase in number, mass and number. So what is mass and what is number? When we say a cell is very small, that means it has low mass. And when we after taking nutritions or after some time, it will grow into the large cell. So we can say that the increase in the mass, so this is the mass. And we talk, when we talk about the number, how can we define number? Like if a cell, like if we take an example of zygote 2n, we will, from the zygote, single celled, we get converted into the whole organism. Whole organism. And we know very well that organism has many cells, like uncountable. Okay, so single cell get converted into many cells. Okay, so this is called as increase in number. Okay, that means growth has two characters, two twin characters, that is growth, that is increase in the mass and increase in the number. The second thing, when it come to the plants and animals, if we talk about plants and animals, growth in plants and animals, we know that plants grow throughout the life, life, and animals stop at a certain age. That is, when we talk about animals, the animals, that is seen only up to, the growth in the animals is seen only up to a certain age. Okay, when we talk about unicellular organism, they get converted into the other, like if we take an example of amoeba get converted into two daughter cells. The nature of the amoeba or the properties of parent amoeba get completely lost, right, because the amoeba get totally converted into two cells. Okay, in majority case, when we take an example of mountains, mountains, boulders, and sand mounds. These things also grow. Like if we take an example of mountain, this is the mountain, and after some time we notice that this mountain grow into the larger part. Why? Due to due to accumulation, due to accumulation of matter or or layers. This is also growth, na? This is also growth. So how can we define uh, living organism with the living organism? Growth is not the defining character, na then. So because this growth is called as assertion. This is called as assertion and internal growth that happen in living organism is called as intussusception. So if we talk about intussusception, we can take intussusception as a defining feature of living organism, but when we talk generally about the growth, we cannot take growth as a defining feature mountains mountains, molds, sand mounds also grow. That is why we cannot take growth as a defining feature of living organism. Okay, so the next thing, that is reproduction. We people think that reproduction is obviously for sure the defining feature of living organism, but it is not. Why? We will discuss it further. But when we take an example of us, like the offspring may be similar to its parent, its parent, or less similar, like in human. Like in human, we are kind of different from our parents, not the exact copy of our parents. When the organism is genetically, when the organism is genetically and physiologically and morphologically and morphologically similar, morphologically similar, these organisms are called as clones. These organisms are called as clones, which are exactly copies of their parents, whether in genetic way or in morphological way. So, if we talk about reproduction can take place by sexual or asexual means. So, if we take an example of yeast or hydra, in yeast and hydra, the reproduction takes place by budding, and if we talk about planaria, then by true regeneration, and in fungi, it takes place by fermentation. Okay, and if we talk about hydra, then here we can see that a part is bulged out, a small bud-like structure bulges out of the parent body, and then after some time it grow, and then it bud off from the parent offspring and grow into the complete organism. So we can say that this is budding in the hydra. And when we talk about planaria, tube regeneration in planaria, then we can say that in the in this structure, the lost part is the basal part, and it again regrows itself into the complete organism. When it lost its basal part, its head part, it grows into completely complete organism. Okay, so can we define reproduction as a defining property of organism? We cannot, because of some examples, like like mules. What are mules? Mules are hybrid of female horse and male donkey, and is sterile. So mule cannot reproduce, still it's living na. And another example is sterile worker bees. These bees cannot grow. An infertile fertile human couple. When imagine if a male and a female are suffering from some disease which through which they cannot reproduce because of any disorder or anything, they cannot reproduce, still they are living. So that hence reproduction cannot be an inclusive defining characteristic of a living organism. Okay, so the next which is very important character of living organism is metabolism. Okay, and what is metabolism? We know that our body is made up of chemicals, like A chemical get converted into B chemical, B chemical get converted into C chemical, C chemical get converted into D chemical, and so on. And these chemicals can be interchangeable, like B can convert into A, C can convert into D, like this. So metabolism is the sum total sum total of all chemical reactions occurring in the body is metabolism. And no, this why this is a defining characteristic, because no known living object exhibit metabolism. Okay, and when we talk about in vitro and in vivo culture, in vitro culture is in controlled condition outside the body, outside the body. This is in vitro. And what is in vivo? Inside the body, inside the body, or or living organism. This is in vitro. Okay, when we take an example that when metabolic reactions were demonstrated outside the body in free system, let's take an example that metabolic reactions are taking place in this test tube. Test tube. So what happened? These reactions are neither living और नॉन लिविंग. ये रिएक्शंस ना ही लिविंग होती हैं और ना ही नॉन लिविंग होती हैं, बट द इम्पोर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट इज मेटाबॉलिक रिएक्शंस आर लिविंग. These are two different concepts that when we are performing an experiment of metabolic reactions in vitro, then these reactions are not living or non-living, but metabolic reactions are living. So we can say that metabolism is the defining feature. Metabolism is the defining feature of all living organisms without an exception. This is very important. Okay, and another concept, another property, that is cellular organization of the body, is also the defining feature of the life forms. Okay, and what is cellular organization? That body is made up of cell. Body made up of cells. Okay, cell or cells. So the next thing which is very important is consciousness. And what is consciousness? Let's take an example. If we like, this is an example. If we touch a burning candle, right, we feel hotness, and immediately we remove our hand, like this. We remove our hand. Why? Because we are aware of the our surrounding and respond according to the surrounding. That's why when we get some stimulus from the surrounding or our environment, surrounding environment, we respond according to the stimulus. This is called as consciousness. And there is some other we know that plants and animals both have consciousness. Plants also respond according to the light, according to the water, according to the temperature, pollutants, etc., etc. Right? But another term, that is self consciousness. And what is self consciousness? That human being aware of himself, aware of himself. So, if we say that we all are very aware of ourselves, that is exactly right. But there is an exception of self consciousness too. That is, coma person. A coma person, which is virtually supported by machines, and virtually supported by machines which replace heart and lungs, right? But that person is not aware of himself. There is no self consciousness in that person. So this is the exception of self consciousness. Self consciousness. Self consciousness is coma person. Coma person. So we can say that. And yeah, the one point is, this condition of coma person is called as brain dead condition. Why? Because the brain of the coma person is not working at all. It's not giving any stimulus or anything. That person is not aware of himself. That is, the self consciousness is lost in that person. So the next, we can conclude that consciousness is the defining feature of living organisms, but we cannot take self consciousness as a defining feature of uh, living body. Another thing, that is how our cells are working. That is, one cell interact to form tissues. These cells have several different different properties. And when we talk about tissue interact to form to form organ organ interact to form organ system, and then to the living organism. It means cells are working in a interactive manner, right? So all living organisms, all living phenomena are due to the underlying interactions. Okay, they are interact with each other and work in a regulatory manner. Like cells have different functions. Then when they interact to form tissue have different tissues have different functions and several properties. The whole body, the whole organism have a different properties, right? So we can say that a living organism, this is the definition of living organism and is very important. The living organism are self-replicating, evolving, and self-regulating interactive system capable of responding to the external stimuli. That is, responding to the external stimuli means aware of the surrounding. So this is the we are stopping here, and in the further discussion we will talk about the remaining part of the chapter. Okay, so what we can say that metabolism metabolism consciousness consciousness and cellular organization, these three are the defining features defining features of living organism without exception. Okay, so here we are stopping here. These are some of the questions that I've taken from the websites, and these all questions are previous year questions which came in the NEET exam. So try to solve them, otherwise we will cover them in the next videos. Okay, so thank you and stay happy, stay safe. Thank you.